Hello everyone. This video is where I talk about this. Donald Trump backing down on his Gaza plan. In this video, I'm not here to make moral judgments about right or wrong. I'm here to explain the difficult situation to everyone and how it has turned into a deadlock. I hope everyone understands the ins and outs of the situation. Let's discuss this objectively and calmly, even though it is a very tragic event. On January 25th, Donald Trump suddenly had the idea that the United States should take over Gaza. He suggested relocating over 2 million Palestinians to neighboring countries like Jordan and Egypt. What does this mean? Sigh, is it Donald Trump? There's no center, I mean over 2 million people. How many people is that? Over 2 million people is a huge deal. It's a big issue for a lot of people. It's not like you can just move them because you say so. Wow, over 2 million people. That's like the entire population of New Territories East, right? February 4th, Donald Trump, at a joint press conference with Netanyahu at the White House, it was further proposed that the U.S. take over Gaza. Look, the U.S. taking over Gaza, what do you want to do about it? At that time, what word did they use? It was the U.S. occupying Gaza, acquiring Gaza, meaning Gaza becomes a part of the U.S. Wow. But that doesn't mean that later on, it doesn't mean that. So they dismantled all the unexploded dangerous bombs and all the weapons. Then they moved those Palestinians who they felt were unclear to Jordan and Egypt and rebuilt it into a paradise on earth. They used the name Rivalela, turning it into a seaside resort and vacation area. So everyone went there, but later they clarified that Palestinians were not allowed to return. This issue was questioned many times, like on what authority did the U.S. military go there? Why could the U.S. occupy Gaza? They said it was based on U.S. power, meaning the U.S. does whatever it wants, and as a result. Of course, that didn't work out right. Now they're quietly stepping down and preparing a graceful exit for themselves. On February 21st, they gave an exclusive interview to Fox News, changing their previously strong stance. They admitted they couldn't convince Egypt and Jordan to accept the Palestinians. I want to explain the situation to everyone. I don't want to make a moral judgment. I mean, here, I'm just being a bit sarcastic. When Trump is on TV, it's completely unworkable. And as the President of the United States, saying something like that is like hitting your head against a wall. It's embarrassing for people to see. As the President, you can't just casually blurt out important policies. I mean, you need to consult your advisors and get a feasibility report for important policies, right? All right. He feels frustrated by the rejection from Jordan and Egypt because the United States provides billions of dollars in aid to these two countries every year. That is, the United States aids Israel and also promised to aid Egypt and Jordan to encourage them to make peace with Israel. This has been going on for several decades. Every year, the money spent in these places, the money spent on Israel, exceeds $10 billion. So why don't the taxpayers complain about this? This has been going on for several decades, amounting to hundreds of billions of dollars. As for Jordan, how much do they give to Jordan? It's $1.3 billion a year. Jordan says, if you don't give me money, then I won't accept it. Even if you don't give me money, I won't accept it. I'll show you why. Jordan can't accept it. Jordan has clearly stated that any act of forcing Palestinians across the border will be considered a serious violation of the 1994 peace treaty. This is the big picture. This is the long-term peace treaty signed by both parties in 1994, which stems from the earlier Camp David Accords. After the Camp David Accords, Egypt and Jordan and talked with Israel, breaking up the Arab coalition. This scared Qatar, and this Shasa, the Egyptian president, received the Nobel Peace Prize. And later, because of this, during a military parade, Saudi Arabia had a person shot by soldiers from the Muslim Brotherhood. All right, let me tell you the situation first. Egypt absolutely refuses to take in Palestinians. Why? Because Egypt is already troubled enough, dealing with the Muslim Brotherhood, which they are constantly suppressing. And after Mubarak was overthrown last time, in the democratic election, the Muslim Brotherhood was elected as president. How dangerous do you think that is? Therefore, they absolutely won't let the Palestinians go over. If the Palestinians go over, what problems could arise? First, well, adding these people, the Palestinians might very likely ally with the Muslim Brotherhood. This is the first point, posing a challenge to the stability within Egypt. Second, if the Palestinians go to Egypt, who will be responsible for supporting them if they have nothing to do? If no one supports them, does Egypt have to take care of them and build a lot of houses? Is there anyone who has promised to support these Palestinians? Egypt's own economy is not doing well. Egypt is a very poor country with a population of over 100 million. Third, I ask you about these Palestinians from Gaza. They have a deep-seated hatred with Israel. So how easy would it be for them to set up a base in Egypt to attack Israel? Then Israel would end up attacking Egypt. The situation would just be moved 10 or 20 miles away. So what's the difference compared to the situation in Gaza? Egypt would have to deploy a significant number of border troops to control these Palestinians, which is why Egypt is unwilling. The number of Palestinians within Egypt is not very high, only about 110,000. So it's impossible to suddenly accommodate around 2 million Palestinians. Secondly, Jordan already has a large number of Palestinians within its borders. Jordan's total population is about 5 million, and at one point, there were 2.3 million Palestinians, meaning there were more Palestinians than Jordanians. As a result, this led to the Jordanian Civil War, which ended with the expulsion of these Palestinians to the Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon. You see, it's actually quite difficult to distinguish between Jordanians and Palestinians. Take a look at this. The issue of the East Bank and West Bank of the Jordan River. Here on the East Bank of the Jordan River are the Jordanians, and on the West Bank are the Palestinians. In the past, this was once part of Greater Jordan, actually. That's great. This is your first time, right? After the war in China and the Middle East, where is this region? It's so underwhelming, so Jordan has to take care of them. Will the Second Middle East War result? So many people just walked away because of the Israeli invasion. As a result, Jordan was surrounded by refugee camps, which eventually led to Jordan's civil war. Later on, it was declared that no one could cross this line. Finally, in 1994, it was decided that people on the east bank of the Jordan River would be considered Jordanians. People born on the west bank of the Jordan River were considered Palestinians, forcibly separating these groups. As for Jordan, did they receive anything? What does that mean? Actually, after Israel expelled a large number of Palestinians, they were never allowed to return to Israel. So once they left, they couldn't return. They could never go back, because this way, the number of Palestinians within Israel could be reduced. Therefore, Jordan wouldn't intervene in this matter. And purely from an international law perspective, to move a population of, like this, 2.3 million people of the population, an ethnic group being uprooted entirely and moved to another place. Legally, this is defined as genocide. So, do the Palestinians want to leave? So what about Netanyahu? He hopes that the Palestinians will leave on their own. Ideally, the Palestinians, whether in the West Bank or Gaza, would all leave, making it a complete Israeli state. This cannot be said to be a national consensus in Israel, but at least it is the wish of those religious zealots in Israel to become a singular entity, a Jewish state. Donald Trump specifically emphasized that he would not forcefully push for the U.S. to take over Gaza. He was merely suggesting it, and when it couldn't be done, it just became a suggestion. Donald Trump used English in the past to express his plans, showing that he no longer has expectations, but he believes his ideas are feasible. He never admits it, stubbornly sticking to his plan. Is the plan of the neighboring country also over? I'm telling you, the plan of the neighboring country is also over. Donald Trump stated, I look at Canada's plan. When are they willing to accept failure? Attempting to rebuild Gaza and not signing while the local residents' ideas are unrealistic, partly due to the presence of Hamas. He is talking about two issues. The first one, this is the difficult situation I'm telling you about. Well, the first issue is, of course, the widespread ruins. You have to rebuild within those ruins, and you need to set up some tents, then rebuild step by step. It's certainly difficult for people to live there, that's for sure. But you need to have a plan, like deciding where to relocate a portion of people. And then once the rebuilding is done, they can move back. This process continues, in rotation. It's already difficult to demolish an old housing estate in Hong Kong, let alone the entire Gaza. Secondly, there are the 2.3 million Palestinians. How do you govern them in the Gaza area? There are only a few ways, a few methods. If you let them have free elections, then they might elect Hamas again. Or, if not Hamas, the leaders of Hamas might all be gone, but people with an ideology similar to Hamas would be elected again, and then it would threaten Israel all over again. All right, what if you don't allow them free elections? If I don't allow free elections, does that mean Israel directly governs them? Hey, the cost is very high, and this would be colonial rule. You know, who is going to pay to support them? It's very expensive for Israel to station troops there right now, you know. All right, so can it be handed back to the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the Palestinian government, the government of the Palestinian people? That would be the government of the West Bank, the Jordanian West Bank Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority is unwilling to go back, because if they do, they are not certain they will be welcomed there if they go there. and are rejected by local extremists, it would be very embarrassing, and they cannot be placed back there by Israel. This is the stance of the United States, but Israel opposes it because of the Palestinian Authority. Managing Gaza would create a shadow of a Palestinian state, so can it be placed under third-party trusteeship? Right now, the whole situation in Gaza has become something that no one knows how to handle. Is anyone willing to send peacekeeping forces there first? I ask you, even if those Arab countries send peacekeeping forces over, is it like managing it as a colony or allowing those people to have autonomy? It's very difficult. It's hard not to let them have elections. Once there's an election, it's really Hamas again, no matter how strict you manage it. In the end, those guys will still make rockets to attack Israel. When Israel retaliates, those peacekeeping forces end up getting killed. This becomes a deadlock. Donald Trump's attitude is to push the Arab countries. What do you say about Egypt? Egypt needs to take the lead in rebuilding Gaza. On February 21st, Arab countries gathered in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, to discuss. Gaza rebuild opposes Trump's proposal. So, basically, that's how it is. People can say, basically, they will have the Arab countries jointly manage it temporarily. Gaza will need funds to support the people of Gaza and rebuild it. Then they will give those people some autonomy. But at the same time, they need to prevent them from attacking Israel. Oh, let me tell you, this task is a daunting one. But aside from this plan, there is another plan, the Emperor's Plan. Donald Trump's concessions have given Arab countries more room to push forward their own reconstruction plans. They will be proposed at the March 4th conference. The countries involved include Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Palestine. The ones providing the funds are definitely Saudi Arabia and Qatar, as well as the wealthy countries like the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. So they are forced to provide funds to help rebuild Palestine. Previously, the people in Palestine relied heavily on aid from the United Nations, but now that Dr. Elon Musk has cut off USAID, whether there is still money available is a big issue. Inflation there has reached 450%, which is shocking. This summit focuses on the proposal by Egypt for Arab countries to completely oversee the reconstruction of Gaza. This is extremely costly, and it's not just about rebuilding. You also have to manage their daily needs and monitor them to ensure they don't attack Israel. Otherwise, when Israel retaliates, the people you have there will be in danger. The meeting discussed Egypt's plan for the reconstruction of Gaza, which is part of a three-phase ceasefire plan between Israel and Hamas. This reaches the third phase, which involves how to handle a permanent ceasefire in the Gaza region. The Egyptian Foreign Minister, Abdullah Turni, in Cairo has developed a comprehensive, multi-phase plan to promote the early recovery and reconstruction of Gaza. According to a Reuters report, this plan requires Arab and Gulf countries to provide $20 billion to initiate the entire plan, which is estimated to need over $50 billion to complete. Currently, Gaza residents are clearing some areas, creating settlement zones for them, and then construction will begin. This will be carried out by dozens of Egyptian and international construction companies to restore Gaza's infrastructure. Israel's foreign minister stated that Israel is waiting to assess Egypt's plan, but has decided not to accept any political or military presence of Hamas in Gaza. However, in reality, despite the prolonged conflict, Hamas still maintains a political and military presence, and it is impossible to completely eradicate Hamas's influence. You haven't completely controlled the Gaza area, otherwise you wouldn't be negotiating with them to release those hostages, right? Some things are quite obvious. After the summit under Turkmenistan, there was no joint statement. This shows that Arab countries are refusing to be coerced. There is a rare consensus on the Gaza-Palestinian issue, unanimously opposing the sidelining of the Palestinian issue. Outside of Israel, there is unanimous opposition. UN, EU, WB estimated Gaza's rebuild at $53.2 billion. In Gaza, 50% of houses have been destroyed, 80% of infrastructure damaged, 90% of hospitals destroyed. The report shows that in the first 15 months of the war, the tangible building losses in the Gaza area amounted to $30 billion. Housing has decreased by 53%. Around 292,000 houses were destroyed in the war, with commercial and industrial losses at 20%. The report points out that more than 15% of critical facilities in health, transportation, and water sectors have been affected, and 95% of hospitals are unable to operate normally. In the next 10 years, $20 billion will be needed in the first 3 years of reconstruction, and they are looking for ways to find this $20 billion. The decline in productivity, income loss, and operating costs have caused an additional economic loss of $19 billion, so the total loss is around $70 to $80 billion, right? Adding to that, the economy has shrunk by 83%, plus there were originally some economic activities internally. Once the war started, everything stopped, and nothing could be done. As a result, they had to sit and wait for others to distribute food. That's what happened. Reconstruction work involves handling 41 to 47 million tons of debris and pressure, and clearing unexploded ordnance. This is a huge task, with a lot to do. In the entire Palestinian region, which includes the West Bank and Gaza, Gaza's economic contribution is only 3%. Although it has 40% of the population in Palestinian territories, the total number of Palestinians is around 5 million. In the Israeli-occupied territories, about 2.7 million are in the West Bank, and around 2.3 million are here. These 2.3 million people contribute only 3% to the Palestinian economy. So you can imagine how impoverished it is, don't you think? On February 23rd, Israel announced, because Hamas is conducting a handover ceremony for hostages, they are not releasing the Palestinians. They are creating a ceremony, right? For the handover of hostages, they will set up a stage. The stage is set up by masked fighters, and some of these places are obviously controlled by Hamas. They lead the hostages to wave to the audience and ask them to speak into the microphone, saying thank you. This is a kind of propaganda by Hamas, but I find it extremely boring. This is a form of humiliation for these people. So Hamas, this is another downfall. Hamas released a video showing 2 Israeli hostages still being held, sitting and watching as 6 hostages were released. They seemed to be enjoying watching the release of the 6 hostages. And they demanded that Netanyahu quickly release them. This is a PR move. The International Red Cross has already told Hamas not to privately release hostages like this, but Hamas refused. Israel and the International Red Cross have both condemned this kind of display release, considering it damaging to their dignity. Since the ceasefire agreement took effect on January 19th, 29 people have been released, including 4 bodies. There was a mistake with one of the bodies. Israel has released 1,100 Palestinian prisoners. As of October 7, 2023, of the 251 hostages taken by Hamas, 62 are still unaccounted for, with 35 confirmed dead, meaning only 27 can still be rescued. The Israeli foreign minister said the second phase of negotiations begins this week. To release the remaining hostages, it depends on who they are holding. Generally, those being held are the ones the Israeli military will release last, and the Israeli military will withdraw from Gaza. This is, I think, a complete tragedy. The whole situation since Hamas launched the terrorist attack. They killed 1,100 Israelis and then took about 300 hostages. Israel retaliated, and in the process, 48,000 people were killed. Additionally, 1,700 more Israelis died in combat. In the West Bank of the Jordan River, which originally had nothing to do with the conflict, 2,000 to 3,000 people died. In these continuous events, 100 years of hatred, I can tell you, these current methods of dealing with it only continue the problem. It cannot be solved. Okay. All right.